Duncan, thank you so much for joining us. Kismayo was very central to Al-Shabaab's, stronghold. How does the fact that they've been defeated and pushed out open up space for the new administration in Somalia?
I think it's you're absolutely right. The entry of the allied forces or the AMISOM forces into Kismayo, sort of brought in a hopeful moment for the country. But remember, what the Al-Shabaab did is pull out, immediately after the offensive. They pulled out of the city. And I think here the big worry is that they still have the capacity to keep on carrying out, hit and run attacks, be it with grenades or, with guns and that sort of thing. So plenty of a hopeful moment, but plenty of work to be done ahead.
Now, of course, over the weekend, we saw that President Sheikh Mohammed named a political newcomer, Abdi Farah Sheridan Said, as the country's new prime minister. Both men are very new, described as newcomers to the situation. How are they going to be able to impose their political authority on a very, dysfunctional clan system where power is actually held?
I think you cannot understate the challenge that is there for President Hassan Sheikh and the new Prime Minister he has picked. The Prime Minister has yet to announce his cabinet, so he'll probably take a few days to form his government, and then you'll see the sort of ministers that do come in. I think the challenge for Somalia is that they're going to have to rebuild the institutions. They're going to have to deal with a very fragile security situation. Remember, there was these attacks soon after President Sheikh Mohammed came in. Remember, there was an attack just outside at a hotel where he had an event with the Kenyan foreign minister. And I think that for me illustrates the sort of challenges that they have to deal with. The security situation is massive. It's a huge challenge. There was another bombing in which about 15 people were killed soon after the president was voted in. We'll get a clearer sense of the way things will work politically when when Abdi Farah Sheridan, the new prime minister who was named on Saturday, does unveil his cabinet. But remember here, the other thing about Somalia is that you've got it's not easy because of the dynamics of the country. You've got the clans, and one of the things that I've had observers say is that these two gentlemen, the president and the prime minister, are above, those sort of inter-clan rivalries, so they have a very good shot of establishing a government. Then the other issue, I think, for the new government is there was a UN report earlier this year that showed, all the aid that is taken into the country are all, problems of corruption. I think they were saying only about $3 out of every 10, given to the country would find its way into state coffers. And I think those sort of challenges, will be with them. It's going to be a huge job, sorting those things out.
Now, of course, you've mentioned the issue of corruption, which has been, focused on by international agencies. Do you think that the election of these two new political figures, given the fact that they don't have, the kind of tainted history that some of the other politicians have, are you confident that they would be able to beat back corruption sufficiently to attract either donor aid or even economic partners in trying to reconstruct Somalia?
It's early days. It's pretty hard to tell how the government will be able to sort out some of these challenges like corruption. I think we are going to have to, as I said, we are going to have to wait for the Prime Minister to name his cabinet. We are going to have to probably give it the next few weeks and months and see how the political situation, does work out. Remember, in the past, during the, in the past years when the transitional federal government was in charge, remember we had a lot of problems, especially between, because the president sometimes would disagree with the Prime Minister, or there would be problems maybe the Speaker of Parliament. So I think we need a few weeks and months to see how the people who are on top now, it's basically the President, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker of Parliament. We need to see what sort of working relationship they have. What we do know is that there is an incredible, there's a lot of goodwill towards Somalia, not least in this region where regional governments like here in Kenya, Uganda, their citizens have been killed by attacks carried out by the Al-Shabaab. Remember also the international community, the United Nations, they're quite keen to see, to see a stable Somalia. So I do think, I do think they'll get some assistance from the international community, the new government in Mogadishu. But how the sort of success they get, I think it's early days to say whether they'll be successful or not.
Just a final question, Duncan. The response of the Kenyans obviously critical because of the proximity and the fact that Kenya has been the target of Al-Shabaab violence. They've welcomed the president. Have they welcomed the Prime Minister?
There hasn't been a comment from the Kenyan government, not that I'm aware of, but I remember there were a lot of congratulatory messages to the Kenya Defence Force from officials here when they moved into Kismayo last week, but one.
Okay, we have to leave it there. That was Duncan Miriri. He's the business reporter at Reuters discussing Somalia's prospects after the defeat of Al-Shabaab in the port of Kismayo.